it can be related to that this is a part of their professional duty. This has been defined as something they should do, and it meets news criteria. It can be shocking. It can be about famous people, so they cover it. And it's something, it can be a social problem they think it's important to cover. And it can also fit with the journalist's ideological beliefs. So there's many reasons and many good reasons for covering this, but it can also be part of the problem of the spread of mis and disinformation. So, and part of the problem with this is that the lie is repeated. So if a type of fake news, something that is documented untrue, and it has a kind of a news format, if it's spread and it's repeated several times, we know from research that people have a tendency to remember it. And if you've heard it many times, eventually people might believe it's true. So that is part of the problem of the repeating lies. So, but at the same time, we also know that there's been a wide growth of fact-checking organization worldwide. And particularly since 2006, we've seen a large increase. We know several things happened in 2016. Several things happened in 2016. We had the US presidential election. We also had a Brexit referendum in the UK. And there's been a growing awareness of the spread of disinformation. So now we have about 400 non-partisan fact-checkers operating in 108 countries. And two of those, mainly it's one in Norway, but we've seen the establishment of Faktis, which was established in 2017. And then something we saw during 2022 was the establishment of Verifiserbar, which is a group that mainly worked on checking and verifying images and videos. So that's something that was developed in the aftermath of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. But of course, fact-checking is not something that is only going on in fact-checking organizations. We also see that going on in all kinds of news organizations. Maybe they don't produce exactly fact-checks in the format of Faktisk and other fact-checking organizations, but it's something all journalists have to do. And I think this is a pretty neat overview, and I'm sorry, this is in Norwegian, but Ståle Gruth has in his book about digital source criticism, he has written about some of the checks journalists should or could do before producing, while they're writing the story, and after the story has been written, in order to check the content. And just to summarize it shortly, we can talk about 4 steps for digital source criticism. So in the Nordic countries, source criticism is a well-established term also among journalists. And when we add digital, it indicates that digital content, digital information has other qualities. We need to check it in other ways than analog material. So first of all, it's important to slow down and examine the source, find trustworthy information, and track claims, quotes, and images, and news story back to the original context. So this is a way to critically evaluate digital information. But when it comes to fact checks and corrections, we should be aware of that not all kind of fact checks or corrections work. We should be aware of how people are thinking and how they how they process information. And there's a large amount of research on this, different type of corrections that work and don't work. So I'm going to talk about some of them now. And a term that maybe some of you have heard about is the truth sandwich. And it's particularly the American linguist George Lakoff who has been talking about that. You should wrap facts around misinformation. So instead of just repeating the lie and say that, no, this is wrong, this is not correct, you should start with what is the correct information and then explain the problem with the false information. That is something that is supported in quite a lot of research. Another advice is, or based on research, is that to use a warning before this kind of correction enters, that can help the reader to perceive the message. So this is kind of like offering a warning that correct information that can help the reader to perceive it better. And also after a warning on inoculation, rebuttal could be used to kind of decline the false information. And that is a way to provide the correct information after faulty information is received. That can limit the misperception. Another thing is the source you're using. The source credibility is important. If the message is delivered by a credible source that is deemed more trustworthy, that can give higher credibility. So that is another thing to be aware of. So the truth, by using this kind of idea about the truth sandwich, that can help to avoid something that is called a backfiring effect. And basically, the backfiring effect is that when you are repeating information, it makes it easier for repeating wrong information. It makes it easier for the user to remember the wrong information, remember the misinformation. So the truth sandwich is a way to try to avoid the backfire effect. So that is also helpful to have in mind. Also, the type of correction is important to be aware of. If often fake stories, they are very entertaining, they're presented in an easy way, it might be easy to understand it. And if the correction is complicated, it might be harder for the reader to understand the correction. So also be aware of not making the correction too complicated. And in media, it's well established the opposite pyramid, how the most important information is presented first. So the place of the correction in the news story is also relevant to be aware of. Don't put it too late. Make sure that the reader is aware of the correction fairly early on. Because we also know that many readers or users are skipping parts of the story, not reading everything. That is important also to remember. We should also be aware that correcting stories, it also depends on the topic of the story, particularly when it comes to politics. It can be harder to correct misinformation among users, because this can be related to their worldview or their identity. So research has documented that it's been easier to document misinformation about health issues, for example, related to the pandemic, compared to misinformation about the political candidates. So particular political stories, topics that people closely identify with, that would be much harder to correct. Another thing to be aware of is the timing. If a lot of time passes between the spread of rumor or a fake story and the correction, the correction might have a weaker effect. So of course that it can be challenging, because often to make fact checks, that can be time and resource consuming. So it might take a while before fact check is completed and published. Particularly when it comes to stories that are spreading widely, it would be smart to try to get that correction early on. This is also related to the world image and everything related to identity. If a false story is debunked and it has not been provided with an explanation of what happened, it will be hard for people to get a proper understanding of what is the stake in the story. So a proper explanation of what actually happened would help people to correct the misinformation properly, instead of just having a debunking. So that is also important. And in general, I'm writing more about these topics in this book. This is in Norwegian, and I also write about why people are believing mis and disinformation. What can be the reasons why parts of the population is more prone to believe some of the false stories shared, particularly on social media. So I think it's important that news organizations are aware of how to do these corrections, because it's not as easy as many people think to do it in a right way. But there's a growing number of research that can help us, guide us when it comes to what are efficient ways of doing this. So that is my message for today. And if you want to contact me, you can reach me on email or contact me on LinkedIn. And here are some of the sources I used for this presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Bente. It's a very clear message there. That's more to fact checking than just checking the facts, to put it in a tabloid fashion. Very much appreciated that you are joining us this morning from Canada. So it was the middle of the night for you, but you look all fresh. So that's very, very impressive. So thank you all for joining us this morning, and a special thank you to Bente. And we'll see you again in June for the next session on 20 minutes. Thank you.